What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. I'm, of course, Andrew Barchak from Chicago, Illinois, joined not by one, but two people today. You all know that ugly mug over there to my left. That is the ugly Danny Miller. But we also have the illustrious winner of the thrilling 32 Bracket Challenge. Tonight we do have Marc with us. Marc, can you introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, yeah. I'm Marc from Cologne in Germany. And like you said, this year I won the thrilling 32 Bracket Challenge. And yeah, I'm working in industry here in Germany. So I'm working for Phantasialand.
Oh,
awesome.
So yeah, it's my daily business, I think.
And have you, just a little bit about yourself, have you been to America yet, like to ride coasters?
Yes, I were there once in 2011 in California. I only visited Discovery Kingdom, but yeah, it was kind of okay the day there.
Yeah, that sounds about most people's review of Discovery Kingdom.
When I went to Discovery Kingdom, I had the same exact reaction.
It was kind of okay.
I attended.
No, that's great, and especially having me having just been to Phantasialand this past year, so that's a hell of a park to be involved with.
What's your favorite ride at Phantasialand?
I think Black Mamba.
Hey,
because it was more special for me.
Uh-huh.
It opened when I was a younger guy, and it felt more special for me than Terran. I think Terran is the better ride, but in my heart, Black Mamba is.
That's the Raptor versus Steel Vengeance thing for Andy, right?
You can't beat a great B&M invert, right? It's just that, like, B&M inverts, there's just something special about
Andy's got Raptor, I got Nemesis, and you got Black Mamba. So there we go.
Correct.
So tonight we actually have we gave Marc a few options for what to talk about tonight, and we settled on this Vekoma resurgence here in the whole world that over the last few years, and we've kind of mentioned this before on the show, where we really think, Vekoma, it's almost like a Vekoma Renaissance, where, everything was Vekoma. Not a whole lot of great things being done, but a lot of things being done with the boomerangs and the SLCs and all these different Vekoma rides. And then they kind of went away, maybe perception-wise. I don't know if that's actually true if we actually look at what they've been doing. Probably not. But I think especially in the United States, a lot of people have poo-pooed them many times. And now we see a lot of great things being done by Vekoma. Vekoma's been the standing joke in the coaster community lately, right? Oh, those SLCs, oh, those boomerangs. But now you can't really make that joke. And Marc, you did a lot of great analysis on Vekoma with what they've been doing over in Europe and Asia. And I think you came to the thesis of maybe they are the biggest roller coaster manufacturer in the world right now with just pure numbers of rides that they've been building, right?
Correct, yeah. So they're building 28 rides this year in total. So that's, a lot more than Interman is doing. Interman is just building 14 rides, and they're also mostly in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
So in total numbers, Vekoma is back in the business, I think.
Absolutely. And have you gotten the chance to ride any of the new Vekomas anywhere?
Unfortunately not. I planned to go to Poland in May, but unfortunately due to coronavirus, it's likely that it will not happen
right now.
Yeah, everything seems to be on hold. Just in the deeper we get into this, it's just like crazy, because it's just you don't know when it's going to end. Hopefully, praying that it ends soon. We've said that multiple times now. Just hopefully it ends soon, because it's just devastating everything from people's lives to the economy to our roller coaster season, which is probably at the end of that list, but still, it's happening. So, but you look at some of the stuff that's being done, and like Danny, like which of these Vekoma rides have you really been looking at and been like, hey, that might be something there?
Well, I think that they've been doing a lot of different things. They've, how many times have we been sitting on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is over the last couple of years, and we see whether it's a roller coaster enthusiast club or someone share a video of a new Vekoma ride model, like what the Top Gun model I think they had not too long ago. They're building. What's the ride? Is it Abyssus? Is the new one that they're putting in? Is that also at Energylandia? Where the big park that's got all those coasters. I mean, they've and then Let Coaster we've talked about here before, which was in the top 50 this year in the Thrilling 32. They're doing a lot of different styles of rides, I think, and sort of thinking more outside the box. Whereas historically, I think at least certainly in the States. And you see a lot of the boomerangs and SLCs and whatnot overseas as well. But historically, we've always thought of Vekoma as the company that was, you just open up the catalog and you point to the model that you want and they send you one. And that's kind of how it works. And in the last several years here, I think it's the exact opposite of that, where we're seeing so much unique stuff and they're doing a lot of custom things. So I think it's interesting how that notion has sort of changed as to what they're doing, yet at least a lot of enthusiast mindsets haven't changed, or they haven't caught notice that Vekoma's doing unique stuff.
And maybe, Mark, maybe you can speak to this since you kind of work at the park. I don't know if you will be able to. Do you get a sense of what what Fly is going to be all about? You think it's going to open, like it's supposed to open this summer. Is that still the target for Fly, or like maybe talk a little bit about Fly, because really that seems to be, I think, one of those Vekomas that is probably most exciting to me right now.
Yeah, I think in Europe this year it's the biggest project of all. So yes, it is still targeted to open it up this summer. I can only say it's maybe, you could say it's a Terron as a flying coaster.
Oh,
really?
So maybe there's not only one launch at this coaster.
Well, and I was curious when we were at the park, because I recall, I forget where we were the day before. I think we were at Walibi, Belgium, and we arrived at the Hotel Matamba before it was completely dark the next night. And I remember when we pulled in to the sort of the hotel complex, you could see Fly. And when we left the next day at the end of the day and drove on to our next park, you could see Fly. And from the main entrance, you could see parts of it. But from inside the park, you couldn't see any of it. And is it just that well hidden, sort of like Terran and Black Mamba are, or does it seem like it's sort of in the same vein as those other rides that are just really well hidden, or is a lot of it also indoors?
No, it's a complete outdoor area.
Really?
But it will be the most immersive area of all. When you're in Rookburg, where Fly will be, you can't see any other themed areas in the park.
Okay, so that's
when you're in Klugheim, you can
impressive.
see parts of Mexico, but in Rookburg, this will not be the case. So it will be super immersive, this area.
So that's impressive when you say it's going to be the most immersive area, because because those of you who have been to Fantasialand and those of you who haven't, who've seen plenty of photos, the photos do not do it justice. I think I described Fantasialand as almost like it was so immersive it almost wasn't practical. Like it was so immersive it was almost unbelievable, just all the things that were going on around you. So for you to say that it's going to be the most immersive area, that's saying something.
Yeah, my boss says it will be the most immersive area in the whole world. So even with Disney or Universal, he will compete with this area.
Wow.
Oh.
Well, I could believe that after having been there now and seeing what that park already is. If that's the target they're shooting for, then that's a pretty good target to be shooting at.
Yeah. So, and the hotel will also be one of a kind, because the coaster is flying directly through the hotel.
Oh.
Oh, that I did not know. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
I did
So
not
the hotel is not just beside like the Matamba Hotel with the African area. So the coaster is directly flying through the hotel.
Really?
Okay, that's pretty cool.
So this, like, and I've said this before multiple times, like Phantasialand is the place that I think I want to go most in Europe. This fool over here talks about Europa a lot. And
Hey, if somebody told me that they like Phantasialand better than Europa, I would have a hard time picking. If he told me you get one day at Europa, one day at Phantasialand, I would have a really hard time picking between those two. I wouldn't want to make that decision.
well, we'll let him decide. Mark, what is your favorite park in Europe right now?
So my personal favorite is Phantasialand.
Yeah.
Because I think it has the theming, but also the better rides. So it has least rides than the Europa Park, but if Phantasialand is building something, then it will hit the market.
Yeah.
I think he makes a good point there, Andy. I think I even said this. I said I don't think Europa had the best. Probably might not have even been in the top 3 of coaster collections of all the parks in here. I mean, I think Phantasialand, even though they don't have the numbers, I think when you consider Black Mamba and Terran, and then you're going to be throwing Fly into the mix here. I think Vinjas is excellent. Colorado Adventure is also excellent. I mean, those 4 rides, those 4 coasters that are already operating, I think are far better than the top 4 at Europa Park. I don't think there's any question in that. And I don't think there's many people who would disagree with that. The coasters and the thrill rides are certainly much better at Phantasialand, I would think. And they're the shooter ride, the Mouse on Chocolat, is certainly better than the one at Europa, I think.
Yeah.
And look at what's just happened. Danny Miller once again has got us into a discussion of European parks, as he always does. As he always does, Danny pulls us into discussions of European parks.
Yeah, I'm just pulling on the rope over here.
Yeah, but no, I think Fly. So to me, because moving into like the next segment here, because a lot of people have questioned, well, why has Vekoma not been able, or we don't see any new Vekoma rides in America. And a lot of things jumped into my mind when thinking about this. One, I think we're ignoring some of the Vekoma stuff that is here. And there's 2 pretty big projects going on for Vekoma right now in America. But because most coaster enthusiasts ignore this area called Orlando as having roller coasters, but Vekoma's got the Tron Light Cycle roller coaster project going on right now, which I'm really excited about. Even though it's not going to be like an amazing roller coaster, I think that whole experience is going to be out of this world. I've known quite a few people who have gone over to Shanghai to ride it, and none of them have been disappointed when getting off. Maybe in terms of thrill, in quotation marks, but in terms of overall experience, they've all been pretty satisfied with that. But I think the more exciting of the 2 roller coaster projects is probably Guardians at Epcot, where they're developing an all-new ride system. They're developing brand new cars that are going to have charging and motion on the car. So I think those 2 are huge Vekoma projects right now. But I think a lot of enthusiasts are like, well, why aren't we seeing some of these models like the Bermuda Blitz or the Shockwave models that we see going up in Europe and Asia? Why aren't we seeing those more in American parks? And Danny, maybe you can explain, maybe come up with some thoughts on why we might not be seeing that here.
Well, I think you both made some pretty good points so far here about just some of the uniqueness and specifically the immersiveness of a ride like Fly. I think we can make some direct parallels the Disney point that we just made, because Disney's done a lot of work historically with Vekoma, not just the two that you mentioned, but also Expedition Everest is a Vekoma ride system. Rocket Roller Coaster is a Vekoma ride system. They've gone down that path many times before. So, and I can't imagine that building rides with this high level of theming is an easy project. It's certainly not as simple just building a big roller coaster with track that's held up by steel supports. It certainly has to be much more involved with that. And that might be a reason that you see a park like Fantasialand going to a Vekoma, because they've got such the experience that they've gotten through the Disney projects of building these rides that are in highly immersive environments that are much more than just the ride system. And maybe that's a point to some of the theming that we're seeing the parks in Europe and Asia and China and whatnot do. A lot of these parks are doing some heavy theming when they redo areas, not just build a new ride. They put in a new area, or they redo a new area. And Vekoma certainly does have the experience through working with the Disney parks of doing those types of projects. So maybe that's why it's not as prevalent here, because we don't have a lot of the parks that do the heavy, extensive theming here. But I think the other reason is some of these styles of rides. If you look at a ride like Fly, a lot of parks, a lot of the big parks that want a flying coaster already have one, either through B&M or there are a handful of Vekomas still around, the old Vekomas, the Flying Dutchmans. But I mean, like Let Coaster, Abyssus, and some of these others, like the Top Gun models and whatnot, a lot of those are launched small to mid-size looping coasters. And I feel like a lot of the parks over here already have something that fits that genre, and the parks that don't have been going to a Gerstlauer for the Eurofighters and the Infinity style coasters. Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, true, I can say. But yeah, I think a chance is that Cedar Fair was currently working with Marc rides for Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. So maybe, yeah, Cedar Fair is going different routes, and also with Vekoma, because I thought, especially with the parks like Canada's Wonderland, Knott's Berry Farm, or California's Great America, because they have an issue. They have not the really big space to have some big rides again and again. So maybe also Canada's Wonderland, I think, has not really a launch coaster. So maybe a Vekoma launch coaster is a thing for them.
I think there's a few parks that could benefit from Vekomas, and I think Cedar Fair more so than maybe Six Flags. I was thinking of like a park like Worlds of Fun, and I always talk about I talk about Worlds of Fun about as much as you talk about Europe, Danny.
You always end up finding your way there.
I do. But Worlds of Fun, I feel like, is one of those parks that could benefit from having a Vekoma ride, either one that is launched or one that isn't.
Especially if they don't put in Cannon in.
Especially if they don't put in Cannon in, which I don't think they are at this point. But it's like they don't have that looping roller coaster, that standard looping roller coaster, where a place like Six Flags Fiesta Texas, you have Superman Krypton coaster, and a Let coaster is going to do roughly the same thing as that. Yes, it's different. Yes, they're completely different style rides. But in terms of experience, I think there's a lot of similarities there with what they do with inversions and stats.
I think the launches are more intriguing to me.
The launches are more intriguing, and I kind of pinpointed like the SeaWorld chain, where we see SeaWorld putting in a whole bunch of new rides, and you look at a place like SeaWorld San Antonio, where that's a place that could absolutely use a standard Vekoma or even a launch Vekoma. They have a launch ride in Wavebreaker, but that's more of a family ride, and this would up your thrill factor a little bit. SeaWorld San Antonio, same thing. San Diego, same thing. You're putting in the B&M dive coaster that has a lot of inversions. You have Manta that does launches, but now you could have something that does both of them maybe. And even like your Busch parks at some level, like a Busch Gardens Tampa, if they were ever to take out Scorpion or something like that, you could add in, because I almost feel like these Vekomas are like hyped up versions of the old Aero Loopers in some regard. That's kind of like I look at them that way. It's like really more intense Aero Loopers that are probably a lot more comfortable too.
I would even make the comparison maybe closer to the Schwarzkopf because loopers, because they're more compact, and a lot of these Vekoma rides seem like they have the ability to be a little bit more compact. I mean, Abyssus and Lek, just to name the two that we've been bringing up a couple times here, those rides pack a lot into a small area, and I feel like the Aero Loopers in general were a bit more drawn out, took up more space, like your Vortexes, your Great American Scream Machines, Shockwaves, even a Viper at Darien Lake, which is slightly smaller, takes up a big plot of land, whereas the Schwarzkopfs were much more compact. I mean, again, bring it back here, Olympia Looping has 5 inversions and a ton of helixes in a very small amount of land, and you fit it on the back of a bunch of trucks. So I think Vekoma lends itself more to that style of ride, which and that's what Scorpion at Busch Gardens Tampa. That's how I thought of that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And like I look at some of these parks, like I think Dorney, I think it's the mid-level parks that don't have those collections that are extremely well developed yet. And a B&M coaster, is nice, but the benefit of Vekoma too is that all the price points we've seen thus far are kind of put you in that mid-level range, where this is the range that if you're going to put in a coaster to Dorney or Worlds of Fun or Six Flags, the Vekoma price structure has been right in line with those investment types. The $10 to $15 million for like a Lek coaster or something like that. But then you talk about Fly Again, and the one coaster type that Cedar Point has always talked about that they don't have is a flying coaster. And to do a launch flyer, I think would be really exciting at Cedar Point. A B&M flyer doesn't get me excited for Cedar Point. That every time someone says that, oh, I wish that Cedar Point had a B&M flyer, I'm like, whatever. Like, I'm not a huge fan of that. But now you talk, if Fly turns out to be as special as people are saying it's going to be, now you're talking, okay, now I might be interested in putting a launch flyer at Cedar Point as opposed to just like a regular B&M flyer.
Yeah. And also, in the beginning of the ride, it's also possible to have a dark ride part.
Okay.
Because the seats are rotating in 45 degrees, and the track is also rotating 45 degrees, and then you're like in the flying position.
So you could also solve
right before the launch then. So.
Yeah, so
I think it's also maybe possible that even like a Disneyland is doing a fly coaster. Maybe I could see it for their Pandora area. So that would really like fly like on a Banshee. So.
Oh my goodness.
And because of the point we made earlier with the Disney stuff, between the Tron, Guardian, Seven Dwarfs, all that stuff, that seems quite feasible and quite possible at some point.
And I tell you what, with the opportunity to move people into different seating arrangements, like that opens up, like you could do a dark ride and then roller coaster and go back to dark ride, go back to like you could do multiple things there to able to, like, especially with a Disney park where you're able to like be more immersive like that. The Pandora stuff, that's real interesting, isn't it? That is real interesting there. Huh.
Yeah, so with a B&M flyer, I could see a Disneyland. So no way. Because they're way too
They're too bulky. Like for Disney, B&M never really worked at Disney because I feel like they're too bulky and they're just they don't lend themselves well to theming. And I feel that's where J.K. Rowling too went down on Dueling Dragons, is there is only so much theming you could do with Dueling Dragons, that at the end of the day it was still just a roller coaster, that you could theme out the queue, you can theme out your areas around the ride, but when you're on the ride itself, at the end of the day it's still a roller coaster. And I think that's with the Vekoma stuff, is all of their stuff has been able to translate well into the dark ride arena. You look at something like Rock and Roller Coaster, that is, your Aero Looper inside, and you have all those black light elements in there. You look at the Tron Light Cycle roller coaster, and they're having the outdoor portion and the indoor portion. And I feel that Vekoma has always lent itself well to the highly immersive arena. And now what we're seeing that, some of these other smaller coasters, I've been told by people that I know that maybe another reason why we're not going to see this stuff in America is that Vekoma's docket is pretty much filled up for the foreseeable future. You had mentioned, Mark, about all the new coasters going in for 2020. I've been told that Vekoma might be booked up for the next 4 years, that if you're not already on the list of coasters to be made, that European parks and Asian parks are pretty much filling up Vekoma's time quite regularly at this point. And so we probably, unless there's stuff that we don't know about that's already in the pipeline, but I've been told that Vekoma is not looking for work here at all, that they are very, very busy.
Yeah, and also with Fly, the track is completed since last year in May. So.
Oh.
Right, the track was done. There was no construction being done when we were there.
Last year in May, correct.
So it's just purely working on the theming aspects and making it.
Yes, and the testing period is really long.
Yeah.
So they're testing since, I think, the end of January. Until it opened, they maybe are testing for half a year, because it's a prototype coaster, and yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the prototypes is, people like to call things prototypes that really aren't prototypes. Like we talk about things like Tidal Twister or Harley Quinn at Discovery Kingdom being prototypes, but they're really not all that prototypical. It's like they're using old technology. But Fly here, with the stuff that it seems like they're doing, especially the flying launch coaster has been something that has been talked about for a while. But because of weight issues with B&M and the style of train that B&M uses, it's something that's been impractical. And I know a lot of people have said, well, B&M's thought about it, and B&M has tried it, maybe in model form, but it's something that's never come to fruition. So here with Vekoma now, they had the Flying Dutchman, but these trains are going to be completely different than that, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So much lighter trains. You have only 2 people per car, but the trains are really long. So you have 20 people per train in 10 cars.
Yeah.
It is a long train. Holy shit! Wow, that is a long train. So the other thing that I wanted to ask about here, because again, it was another park. It was another park that we visited on our trip, and we had, at the time we had heard that they were doing something, but that we didn't know exactly what it was yet. But the new stuff that's going on at Tripsdrill, and you had it in the notes that you sent us, and we looked over. And I haven't heard much of anything about that. Now there's 2 rides. Is it 2 rides that's going to be intertwined with one another? How much do you know about what's going on at Tripsdrill?
Yeah, at Tripsdrill they're building also 2 coasters. At first, a family boomerang coaster, so like Reich in Klipheim.
Yep.
And then they're building the new STC, so the suspended thrill coaster. So they're I would say upgraded SLC, but I think it will ride like an B&M. It's what I'm thinking, because yeah, it's using the same track technology as Abysses or Leg Coaster. So I think it will be really smooth.
Now, I wonder, is that similar to Andy? You rode Dragonflyer at Dollywood last year, right? Which is the newer. I think it's the same or similar track style, but that's more the family inverted coaster. How did that ride?
Dragonflyer, it's a family coaster, but it was very smooth. I've always really liked the inverted seats on these newer style Vekomas, where before the SLCs, one of my biggest complaints about the SLC has always been the horse collar restraint. It's just so uncomfortable. And you like to rip on T3 a lot. And I'm not going to sit here and say T3 is amazing at Kentucky Kingdom, but
at least you're not banging your head around.
At least you're not banging your head around. You're open air. You can feel stuff going on. Yes, the seatbelt structure cut into you, and I don't think that was the right way to go. But I thought it made T3 more bearable. And at the end of the day, if you force me to ride an SLC, T3 is up there for me with choices where I thought T3 was better than the horse collar. The horse collar, I get a little claustrophobic in, like it's all over you. It's tight on me too, because I got the barrel chest and everything. So those style of restraints on Dragonflyer, and I think they're pretty similar to what's on Freedom Flyer too at Fun Spot. That those family style restraints that are a little bit upgraded are really superior. And I to do a big invert using those seats and having the two across seats, I think changes the game on inverts too. Where if you're in a B&M invert and you're in the middle of the car, I think you lose a lot of the sense of what's happening around you.
Yeah.
And having the two across seats, which is also one of the great things about Volcano, because Volcano had the two across seats, where you have that field of vision next to you. So having that opportunity at Tripstrill to have a bigger invert using those style of seats with just basically the lap harness that come down over you that we've seen so many of these parks go to, I think that's going to be really exciting. And I'm a huge fan of inverts in general. I think invert, if you had to say what style of roller coaster is your favorite style of roller coaster, I love inverts. And having a big invert with a two across seating with that field of motion and that type of swing, just on the promotional pictures, the amount of swing you're going to get on it looks fantastic. I think that might be pretty exciting there.
No, I think so. I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity to do some cool things there. And I think there's a lot of different. It's amazing how many different styles of rides we've talked about with these. I think the notes here that we have sort of made the comparison that Vekoma is sort of like the RMC. Because of just the different styles. With RMC, you've got wood, you've got steel, you've got this single rail concept. There's no reason to think that RMC wouldn't do an inverted coaster concept at some point. And with Vekoma, you're seeing that. You're seeing these big rides, these small rides, the inverted coasters, the family rides, the high thrill coasters, the launch coasters. And Vekoma has ventured into the wood coaster realm a couple times here and there. That's not their bread and butter necessarily, but I think there's certain opportunities. But I guess with all of that said, I would pose the question to Marc here, since he started this discussion topic today. Is there something that you would like to see Vekoma do, or something you would like to see them develop? Maybe it's something completely new that we haven't seen them do yet. I mean, what are your thoughts on where they might go next?
So I could think that they may be going the same route as Marc rides, because Marc rides was in earlier days, you only thought about a wild mouse when you thought about Mach rides. And
yeah.
then in the late 2010, so with 2009, they built Blue Fire at Europa. And yeah, right now they're building also hypercoasters. And their founder, like Roland Mack, always said, yeah, not our company's not capable to build a launch coaster or build a hypercoaster. And right now they're doing this. So maybe we also see a hypercoaster from Vekoma in the next years.
And I think that's exciting too, because, you know, as much as I was big on mock rides, and then, you know, Time Traveler here was a great ride. I think Copperhead Strike missed the mark just a little bit, but now what Vekoma's doing, I think Vekoma right now, I would love to see some of their stuff over here in the States too, just to get a taste of what they can do.
Well, and I like the point that you said there about what Roland Mach said, because when we were at Europa Park, we had a Q&A session, also a backstage tour of Blue Fire. And at one point, you know, Mach, if you look at Europa Park and the fact that almost all those coasters are Mach coasters, and just the vast differences you have between the Blue Fires and some of your smaller family rides, the bobsled coaster, there, the Schweizer Bobbin, and then Arthur, the dark ride coaster combo, which is just incredible. You know, I remember someone asked, you know, you do hypercoasters now. Would you ever build your own hypercoaster? And the answer immediately was, oh, if we were deciding on a hypercoaster today, we wouldn't have hired B&M to build it. We didn't do hypercoasters back then. We didn't feel comfortable doing it. We didn't have a proven design. He said if we were building Silver Star today in 2019, we would absolutely do it ourselves. So I think that was a great point there that I didn't even think of, is the comparison to Mach rides and how long ago you thought of them for maybe one or two styles of rides, and that was it. And look at their catalog now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up here for tonight. We are running out of time here. So this was a great discussion. Once again, Marc, congratulations on winning the Thrilling 32 Bracket Challenge.
Try and become the first person to repeat as Thrilling 32 winner now. We haven't had one of those yet.
True. So I have, of course, Andy Rybarczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And Marc from Cologne, Germany.
And as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Marc.
Thank you, too.